Okay, right, good to see you all here tonight at the Fairmile. The Fairmile Natter, of course, and that is more or less what our talk's about tonight, because everything in this talk takes place within, not the curtails of this building particularly, but just across the road. So I've kind of called the bit about the Macklins, who are the people across the road, from gunboats to Jell-O. So quite a wide thing to cover, really. Anyone heard of the Macklins?
Yeah.
Someone saying yes? Yeah. Someone over there. Anyone hasn't heard of the Macklins? Yeah, quite a lot more, isn't there? You'll wonder why when we get to the end of this you haven't heard of them. Okay, we're going to start with the first 9 minutes. I timed it out earlier. Just on the Fairmile, this place. A little bit of history about where you're sitting. Probably in someone's drawing room, I would think. Looking at this at the moment. Okay. That's not the Fairmile. The Fairmile itself is actually built on Fairmile Common, right, as it was. It was originally owned by a chap called Dr. William Anderson, and he rebuilt Haywood, which is what this is, just over there, along the road a little bit. It's now the American Community School, if you're familiar with that. Yeah? So he rebuilt the Haywood estate in 1804. Now, Haywood has some royal connections. Now, I know we've got Claremont just up the road, and Haywood is another one that connected into the story with Prince Leopold and Princess Charlotte, who lived at Claremont. They honeymooned locally at Oatlands Palace in Weybridge. Unfortunately, Charlotte died in childbirth at the age of 21, and that was in 1817. Now Leopold, where's a pointer? Oh, it does work. Leopold, he actually became the King of Belgium in 1832, but prior to that, he lived at Haywood, just there, with his mistress, Caroline Bauer, a German lady, and they were there late 1820s, 1829, around about that period. But then when it became, obviously he was going to become King of Belgium, she had to be ditched, went back to Germany, on a full treasury pension, no less. So it's not too bad really, and he became King of Belgium. It's all a bit unclear if they were actually married or not. Probably not, is the consensus, I think. But Leopold's sister Victoria married Prince Edward, and their daughter, also called Victoria, became Queen Victoria. So there's a nice little connection there with Haywood. Now, Claremont Lodge. Now, I hope you can see that map. It's not terribly clear, but Claremont Lodge is up there, and that is this building. And the other part of our story, Fairmile Cottage, is just there, so just across the road. So Dr. Anderson, he built this place. Date is a little unclear, but probably around the mid part of the 19th century. And you can see it clearly marked on that map there as Claremont Lodge. Now by 1849 there was a chap called Captain William Armstrong living there. He was a very keen gardener. I should say living here, really. A very keen gardener, and he was very famous for inventing the rose girdle label. I'm getting lots of blank expressions here. Why am I getting blank expressions? Why do you not know the rose girdle label? It was a big thing apparently in 1849. Don't ask me, I've never been able to find a picture of the rose girdle label, but I assume it's a label that goes on roses. There we are. He remained here until at least 1854. Now during this period it does look as if the house, Claremont Lodge, became part of the Burhill Park estate, which is over that way. Of course the A3 would not have been there in those days, so it was all parkland up to Burhill Park, which is the golf club today. And we can see Burhill Park there. Anyone golfed at Burhill? Yeah. So that was basically the main house that covered this area. Now it was owned by Lord Ivy, but in 1881 there was a Jared Patterson living here, and he was the clerk to the Admiralty and the secretary to the Marquis of Dufferin and the Right Honourable W.H. Smith MP, as well as being a land agent for Lord Ivy, which is why he's living here. A little bit later, we can move up to another 10 years, and the name the Fairmile first appears in records. It's known as Fairmile Claremont Lodge, and it's occupied by two gardeners, presumably for Lord Ivy's estate, and they were called Henry Frost and Roland Frost. And looking at their ages, Henry was 70, Roland was in his 20s, grandfather and grandson, possibly. But at that time, it was actually listed as the estate office for Lord Ivy. So we know it was definitely that. There's a little bit of a gap, not much, until about 1911, when Claremont Lodge is now occupied by this chap, Sir Richard Augustine Redmayne. Now he came from County Durham. He had a mining background. He was the manager of Seaton Deverell Colliery up there, also managed collieries in South Africa, but by the time he came to live here, he was the government's chief inspector of mines, and the house at that time had 16 rooms, and he moved his family in here. They remained here till at least 1934, and then you see an OS map there from 1934, and the house has changed its name. It's now Fairmile Manor on the OS maps. Fairmile Cottage still there. The war came basically, and the house was requisitioned by the ministry, and in 1942 a chap called Muhammad Mohammed Malik was shown as a resident here. But the premises were actually occupied by Airspeed 1934 Limited. So it was actually used as design offices for that company during the war. One of those designers was a chap called Arthur Hagg, who had worked for de Havilland, designed the AS-57 Ambassador for Airspeed, and he designed that aircraft in this room.
Oh.
I might have made that bit up. But it puts a little bit of colour, doesn't it? May well have been. I have no idea at all, but it may well have been in this room. There were some problems with this particular aircraft. There were only 23 built in the end, and it didn't go into service until 1952, some 9 years after Arthur had designed it in this room. By the end of the war, 1944, Airspeed had moved out. They'd moved to new offices in Christchurch, but Malik was still shown resident here. So I'm still not quite sure what he was, whether he was a caretaker, something like that, who was looking after the house, maybe, and living here. But certainly can't find any record of him any other sort of place, really. Okay. So that brings us up to the Fairmile. It's not quite clear when the house was released by the ministry, but in 1949 it was turned into a hotel, and a chap called L.B. Purifoy was the owner. It became the Fairmile Manor Hotel. In the 50s and 60s the hotel was run by the Spirit Group. And is there anyone here that's ever eaten in here in the 60s? Where is he?
Could be.
No, there he is at the back. I couldn't see you. You were hiding at the back.
My sister got married.
And you did?
My sister got married here in the 60s.
Did she?
Yes.
Ah,
Late
excellent.
60s.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Oh, there you go. So the famous coach that was at the front, which you're probably all aware of, first arrived on the lawn during the 1960s. I haven't really been able to find out exactly when, but it became a well-known local landmark. So it was never a coaching inn. Some sort of local people say it was a coaching inn because of the coach at the front, but no, it wasn't. But it was on the main route from London to Portsmouth, which runs just out here. and coaches would travel along it. Fairmile Common was a good place for highwaymen to hang out, but obviously back then it was actually common land here anyway. Also a great place for police speed traps. Captain Sant took over the Surrey police in 1899 and he didn't like these newfangled motor cars. So in 1905 he had a real vendetta against these vastly speeding motorists, putting speed traps out here on the Portsmouth Road, here and down at Godalming as well, when it got that far. The coach itself was renovated in 2013. It was vandalised first out the front here, and it was broken up quite badly. The hotel owners couldn't really fix it, so it was sold to the Whitbread hop farm over at Paddock Wood. Yeah, that's where it is today. Still there. Has been restored. So this place in the 70s, 1978, Trust House Forte bought it. Proposal for a 30-bed extension all across the front. That never came to anything. But then there was another one for the bedrooms at the back, which you obviously know today. That did get passed. In 2020 it was sold to Chef and Brewer, and this is where we are today, at the MG Car Club Natter, at the Fairmile. That's it, thank you very much.